had a trip I completely forgot about that I had to leave, so I was on the road. But I'd walk through just some of the basics of AI. We walked through and I showed you examples of some of the different models that we have within Microsoft. I walked you through the Foundry portal and walked you through how you go in and you configure an actual or set up the initial configuration of a model. So what I want to do today is I want to dive a little bit deeper. And what I want to do is I want to take one of the existing models that I've deployed and I want to customize it. And to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and I'm going to record this session since we don't have a, oops, oh, you are recording already. Never mind. Perfect. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and we're going to walk through some of the customizations that we can do and understand the importance of these customizations and the use cases for them and so forth. All right. So one of the models that I have deployed now is GPT-4o. So and if you want to deploy a model, you can go to the model catalog within Foundry. And by the way, to get here, you can go to ai.azure.com or you can go to OAI, which is openai.azure.com. And then you have to have a subscription, so you have to create an Azure subscription for it. And then once you've done that, you can go in and log in and get to this page here. But once your model's deployed, you want to start testing and I don't like to use the word fine tune. And the only reason I don't like to use the term fine tune is because right here there's an option for fine tuning, and so it's not the same thing. But what we can do is we can go in and select one of the models that we've deployed. So I've got 3 different models that I've got configured, the initial deployment. What I want to do is I want to go in, I'm going to pick just the first one here. Notice we did DeepSeek last time we had our call. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to pick the GPT-4o model that we have here. And I want to walk through customization. Now, why is it important to customize your deployment? And I'm going to explain that to you right now. Let's say hypothetically, let's say you're a travel agency and you want to create an AI chatbot or interface for your customers to go in and ask questions like, what are your current vacation packages that you have available? Do you offer any type of senior citizen, military, or whatever it is, discounts? Are there any blackout dates when these packages can't be used? Can I do a payment plan for my trip and so forth? So let's say you want to set that up to where customers can go to your site and ask those type of questions, and you want the model to be able to answer that. Well, I don't know about you guys, but when I plan a vacation, typically I'm happy. It's stressful setting it up, but you're happy you're going on vacation, so it's kind of fun doing it. So if I've got a travel agency and I've got customers that are submitting requests to our chatbot, I want to reflect that happiness that the customer has. Obviously, they're happy to be booking a vacation, so I want to make sure my chatbot is happy also in the way it responds. And that is one of the things that you can do right here in the instruction section. So the purpose of the instruction section is to go in and define the rules of engagement. What is it how do you want this model to behave? So one of the things that I can do is I can go in and say, you are a friendly, by the way, ignore my my typing skills here. With 30 years of IT, 33 years, I should have accidentally learned how to type here, but I suck. So you're a friendly, helpful agent, or we'll call it helper. You are a friendly helper. Now, in the instructions, your users do not see these instructions. But whenever a request is submitted into the AI deployment, the model itself, these instructions are included with that. So these instructions tell your model how to respond, what it can say, what it can't say, and so forth. So we're going to say you're a friendly helper. You will end each response with this. Is there anything else I can help you with? And I'm going to put XOXO, which I think I have to ask my daughter, but I think these are like the universal sign for kiss kiss or something like that, kissy face. But I'm just going to put that in there just to kind of make it stand out more. So every response will end with this. Now, in addition to this, let's put something else in here. You will always tell the customer, congratulations. We'll do congrats on your vacation planning. Thank God we have spell check here. Here we go. And then I can put other rules in here, like let's say this was going to be used for HR. So let's say internally within your HR organization, you want to create a chat bot where employees can go and ask questions like, hey, what form do I need to fill out for time off? Or, I want to see about getting promoted. What is the process for that? Or, typical HR questions. In my instructions, I can put, you're going to be a friendly, helpful HR agent. But one of the concerns is what if a user says, hey, how much does Bobby make? Or, where does Ricardo live? PII information, sensitive information. I want to make sure my model doesn't answer those questions. So in your instructions here, you could put the rules of engagement. Do not respond to payroll information. Do not respond to PII, personally identifiable information, and so forth. All of that goes in here. Now, just to have fun, all responses will be in, let's say, Spanish, English, and let's see who the nerds are. Anybody a nerd like me here? Everybody know what Klingon is? Am I the only nerd in this group here? So if you ever watch Star Trek, then that's one of the races in Star Trek there. But anyway, so I want all responses to be in Klingon, Spanish, and English. Now, what I could have done is I could have said at the very beginning, ask the user what language they would like all responses in. And the first time the user uses it, it'll pop up and say, hey, what language would you like your responses in? And then they could pick a language. And then in my instructions, I could say all subsequent responses for that user will be in their language, whatever language they select. So these are the type of things that you can put in here. So now we've got our instructions. So let's go in here and let's just test it out. On the right side here, we can test out our model. So I'm going to say, who is in the FIFA World Cup? And by the way, because this model is older, it's not real time. We're going to say, what is this, 2026? So in 2022, which is the last one. Let's narrow it down. What countries in the northern hemisphere are in the FIFA World Cup in 2022? So let's go ahead and submit this. And on the right side, this is where you test your configurations to see what we have here. Oh, and it did not do my, so that's weird. It didn't do my, oh, you know what? I didn't apply. I didn't save my settings. So even though I put it, I didn't click apply. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's start again. I'm going to copy this. By the way, you have to apply your settings. So let's go ahead and ask that question again. So now you notice that the first language that it gave us here is Spanish. So it gave us Spanish responses. And it cut off here, which there's a reason for the cutoff. And I'll explain to you the cutoff here in a second. But it started and then it cut it off. And that has to do with some of our parameters that we have set down here. But this is a perfect example here because I have an incomplete response. Any questions, anyone at this point? Any questions? All right. And again, we'll come back to this. The cutoff, I'll explain it to you here in a second. But what I'm going to do is we're going to actually talk about it right now. We're going to skip the data piece for now. We'll come back to that and add the section piece. We'll We'll skip that. We're going to go down to the parameters section. Now, the parameters section, you can use the instructions to control the response, but there are pros and cons to that. The benefit is you can be very granular. But the downside to it is, notice down here on the bottom right, you see this little count right here? Remember, everything in AI is a token. Everything's broken up into small chunks called tokens. Even though I asked a very basic question, what countries are in the Northern Hemisphere, it ate up about 388 of my tokens. And if you notice here, when I hover over it, it breaks it down. The message history, user query, and so forth. So it breaks down what the token count is. This is important because this is how each model, each configuration has a max token submission. We call them inputs and output responses. So now let's go back down. Let's go down here, and we're going to go to some of the parameters. So the first parameter is this: pass messages included 10. This can go up to 20. So, and all these are defaults. I haven't changed any of these. Let me explain to you what this parameter is for, and when you may want to use it versus not using it. Let's say hypothetically, let me pick on somebody. Let's see here. Amar, are you there? Can you hear me? Amar, are you there? Who's Antonio? Can you hear me, Antonio?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm gonna pick on you now, Antonio. All right, so Antonio.
Yeah, yeah.
What were his stats?
His stats? What do you mean?
What were his stats? You don't know, right? That's expected, by the way.
Okay.
So let me give you a scenario of what just happened here. Let's say Antonio and I were having a conversation, okay? And let's say we're talking about, well, let's talk about the World Cup. It's going on right now. Matter of fact, U.S. just beat Australia 2-0. So, and at the end there were like 6 or 7 yellow cards. They were getting yellow. They were beating each other up. But anyway, so let's say hypothetically, Antonio, we're talking about the FIFA World Cup, and I say, hey, Antonio, did you know that the U.S. was playing today? And then you would come back and say either yes or no, and now say, by the way, such and such on the U.S. team scored 2 goals. Or I may say, hey, the U.S. played today, and you come back and I say, Javier or whoever on the U.S. team did well today, and then you come back and you say, what were his stats? So in that scenario right there, when you ask me what were his stats, who are you talking about, Antonio? Who are we talking about there? The Javier guy, whoever on the team we were just talking about. What happened in that scenario is you asked me a question, I responded. You then asked me a follow-up question. So let's do this. Antonio, where do you
Okay.
live?
I live in Jamaica.
How old are you, Antonio?
I'm 20. How are you? How old are you?
I'm 51. I'm an old fart. You can't ask me that. I'm too old. So, what street specifically?
Chigwell Road.
Okay. So, now, forget that conversation that we just had, okay?
Okay.
Antonio, what street specifically? What am I
Do I
talking about?
live on?
I didn't know. Remember, this is a brand new conversation. We never started anything.
Oh,
So I
so
just
I
asked
would
you, what street do you live on? And I'm sorry, I said, what street specifically? And you asked me a question. He's like, do I live on? What are we talking about here?
I don't have the context to understand what you're saying.
Exactly. That is what pass messages included controls. If I set pass messages included, and let's clear the canvas here. So I'm going to say, watch this here. Who won the FIFA World Cup in 2022? So right now, AI knows we're talking about the FIFA World Cup. And in this case, Argentina won. I'm going to say, who was the player of the match. Now, how did it know to respond based on this question? How did it know to respond with this? Because it knows the previous question. Right here, we were talking about the FIFA World Cup in 2022. So when I asked a follow-up question, it said, okay, I know we're talking about the World Cup in 2022. So when you ask who the player is, the player of the match, it's got to be from the World Cup. And it came back and told me it was Messi. Now let's put in here. Let's put in there. Where is he from and is he married? So he's from Argentina, born in blah, blah, blah. He's got a wife and 3 kids. How does AI know who we're talking about here? Well, it knows we were talking about the World Cup in 2022. I asked about the player of the match, so it knows we're talking about a specific person, in this case, Messi. So then when I said, where is he? Who's the he? The he is from up here and right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this out. Let me copy this piece here. I'm going to clear this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to go with pass messages of 1. I'm just going to ask who is the player of the match. Notice the response here. It doesn't know what we're talking about. Notice here. Unfortunately, you haven't specified which match you're referring to. Why? Because I cleared the conversation. We're starting from scratch, so it has no clue what I'm talking about. So let's do this. Won the World Cup in 2022. Who was the player of the match? Let's go ahead and continue on here. What was the score? There goes 3-3. And then I'm going to say, what's it? There you go. So if I keep my, and by the way, you don't see it here, but if I keep my pass message included at 1, here's what happens. You're telling the model, only remember the last piece of the conversation. Do not take into account in your response everything else in that conversation. Just look at the last part of the conversation and then respond based off of that. Let me give you a real world scenario where this is important. Let's go back to our hotel, our vacation planning chatbot we're building. I know if I'm building a vacation chatbot, a customer is going to go to the chatbot and ask a question. They may ask a question, what's the current deals going on? The model's going to come back and give a response. Most customers aren't going to end there. They're going to ask a follow-up question and another follow-up question. They may ask, what are the cruises coming up? Then the next question is, what dates? Another question after that could be, are there any blackout periods? And then the question may be, how much is the cost for that cruise? All of that could be in one conversation. But if you keep the past messages included at 1, it will not remember the entire context of that conversation. So when you're designing this, when you're configuring it, you have to figure out, and this is kind of guesstimate, it's not an exact science, but you have to figure out, is the person who's going to interact with this model going to ask one question and that's it? Or are they going to ask a question and then a follow-up question and maybe some additional questions? If they're just going to ask one question, past messages included could be 1. But if they're going to be asking follow-up questions, I may say, you know what? Include in the response the last 10 pieces. So this is number 1, the response 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well 6, 7, I shouldn't have counted that, and so forth. So it's going to remember up to 10 parts of that conversation. The benefit to that is AI has better context on what we're talking about. The lower you make the pass message, the less context it has to pull from to give you a great answer. But just like everything else in life, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Here's the downside, because everything's got a downside. Notice this number down here, my token stuff here. If you notice, oops, and it won't, right here it says message history size 876. Here's the downside. And I'm going to use just basic numbers. These are not exact numbers. Remember, everything is priced based on token usage. When I asked this, why is my pointer not working here? I don't know. Hang on, guys. Let me stop sharing for a second. My pointer's not working. Share here. Something weird's going on. It works there. That's working now. Okay, that's kind of weird, but I don't think it works full screen, so I'm just going to do this here. All right. So in the scenario that we're looking at here, let's assume for a second this right here took 5 tokens. So I submitted to the AI model my question. It costs, let's call it dollars to make it easy. It costs $5 to ask the question. This response here, let's say hypothetically, costs 10 tokens or $10. So that entire conversation cost me $15. Then I asked a follow-up question. Let's say this question cost me $3. But here's the thing, because of my messages included, it's not only going to charge me to $3, it's also going to resend the original response, and it's going to resend the original question, which is up here. So it's going to charge me the $5, the $10, plus the $3 for the new request, and then whatever the cost of this is going to be in tokens. Does that make sense to everyone? So it may sound like a good idea to maximize your past messages included, but it can really start eating up your tokens if you start having a lot of information in there. This is where you kind of guesstimate, how many of the previous parts of the conversation do we need? Everybody good? Any questions on that? So that's your past message. By the way, all of these parameters eat up into this token count. By the way, the instructions that we had up here where we said respond in Spanish, English, and Klingon, and this and that, that eats into your token count also. Every time you ask a question, this is sent automatically. Every time you ask a question, this is sent. So whatever the size of this is in tokens gets eaten up every time. So there's 3 components that you're going to get charged. I say charges by tokens. You get charged for this, you get charged for the response, and you get charged for all of this. Now, keep in mind, there's hundreds of thousands of tokens you can do at a time. In some models, millions. So it's not like, I just use dollars as an example, but it's not dollars. We're talking like fractions and fractions of pennies. So past message included says, how much of the previous parts of the conversation do we want to include so AI knows what we're talking about? The next thing we have is max response. Remember earlier, which I think I've deleted, I deleted it, but remember earlier when I asked it a question and it cut off before it finished it with the response? That has to do with this right here, my max response. Let me give you, and my wife's not here, so I can pick on her for a second. Even if we're recording this, if you ever find my wife and you bring her this recording, you have very strong blackmail evidence against me. You can make millions. I'll pay you whatever not to tell my wife what I just said. I'm just kidding. Now everyone's awake. Let me give you an example. Me, when I talk, even though I'm teaching now, but normally I have very few words. When my wife talks to me, the answers are normally yes, sure, we can do that if you want to. No, Whereas my wife, she paints an entire narrative, an entire picture when she talks to me. She'll talk for 5 minutes and then I'll respond with a yes or a no. That's just how I am and how she is. In AI, it works very similar. You can define when you put in your request, you can define how big the response will be. That is this max response. This is a token count. So how many tokens can be included, or what is the maximum size of the response in tokens? If I go in here, let's clear this. And let's make this 20. 20 tokens, which is not much at all. I'm going to say, tell me about Harry Potter. Some of you guys may like Harry Potter. I'm not really a Harry Potter. I don't know much. But notice here, I said, tell me about Harry Potter. And it started and stopped. Let's get rid of the, because I don't know these other languages here. So I'm just going to say respond in English. Actually, don't even get rid of this altogether. I say, tell me about Harry Potter. Notice here, congrats on vacation planning. Harry Potter is a beloved series of books written by British author J.K. and it stopped. You can tell because the little dots here that it didn't finish everything. Plus, you can copy it. But why is that? Because I limited the size of the response. Let's change this to 200 now. Now tell me about Harry Potter. Notice I'm getting a larger response now. So that is you can control the size of the response. Here's why it's important. In your applications, remember the response is a charge against your token count. If you want to limit the size of the response to limit token usage to save on tokens, you can select the max response. Depending on the model that you're using, this one is 16,384, but some of the other models, let's look at DeepSeek here. Those here, DeepSeek, you have 128,000, which means with DeepSeek, you can have a very large response if you wanted to. So it's designed to control your tokens, the tokens in the response, which saves you essentially money at the end of the day. So what you want to do is you want to kind of figure out what's a good number to put in here. You don't want to make it too big. You definitely don't want to make it too small because it'll cut off the response. So that's your maximum response size. The next thing we have is temperature. By the way, for each one of these, there's a little information button. If you hover over it, it'll tell you, what each one of these is, like temperature. So here's what temperature does for you. When the model responds, how do you, and notice here, how do you want it to respond? Do you want the response to be very random, or do you want it to be very specific? So if I set this temperature down to 0, that's like talking to me. I'm going to give you a quick response. It's going to be very basic. If I set the temperature higher, let's say to the highest setting, then it's going to be like my wife giving you a response. It's going to be more colorful and more detailed and so forth. Here's where this really comes into play. You can use AI models to write code, write scripts. When I use models to write code, or in the old days when I did, I don't really write code as much anymore. But what I would do is I'll set the temperature down to 0 because I want the code to be sleek, efficient, and to the point. I don't want any fluff in my code. Now, here's another example. Let's say you're writing, and let's demonstrate here. Let's clear this. And I'm going to change the temperature down to 0, and I'm going to say, tell me, let's do this, write a 1-paragraph review of McDonald's. Let's have put 1 paragraph to control what it is. So notice here, congrats on your vacation planning. McDonald's is a global fast food giant that delivers consistent, quick, affordable meals for people on the go, known for its iconic Big Mac. Notice how very to the point it is. There's no fluff in this at all. So now what we're going to do is let's put our temperature at the highest setting. Now, obviously, you can go somewhere in between if you want. Now, let's do it again. Now, notice the tone of it now. McDonald's is a fast food staple that's hard to miss, offering quick and affordable meals for people on the go. Their iconic menu items like Big Mac, chicken nuggets, and so forth. The convenience of drive-thrus. Notice the tone is different. It's less boring and robotic, and it's more exciting and more colorful in the way it speaks. That is temperature. So why is this important? If my AI tool is going to be used for a travel site, I want it to be more colorful and happy and expressive. If I'm using it to analyze data, then I don't care about the colorfulness and the happiness. I just want the pure information. So if my model is going to do that, I may set the temperature low. But if, let's say I'm using this model to write articles, articles and blog posts and things like that. In those scenarios, I'm probably going to set the temperature higher depending on what kind of article it is. Is it about food? Is it like a Yelp review of some restaurant? Then I want it to sound better. If I were writing an article, let's say in the Wall Street Journal, which is a business publication, which is, by the way, the most boring thing you could ever read in your life. It's all financial stuff. It's boring. But if I were writing something for that, I would put my temperature way down because to match every other thing in there, which is very boring. So this can control tokens, but indirectly. It's not a direct token controller. Everybody good? Any questions on that? The next thing we have is top P. Top P is basically top probability. If I were to go in here and say, tell me about, well, let's just go back in here. Tell me about McDonald's, and I'm going to set the temp. By the way, you never set top P and the temperature. You do one or the other. You never do them both at the same time. All right. So congrats on your planning. Is a global fast food giant that delivers consistent quality and convenience. Known for its iconic Big Mac fries. Here's what top P does. Whenever you ask an AI model a question, its response is based on predictions. It predicts what the next word will be in the sentence when it responds. So it said McDonald's is, so after the word is, what's the highest probability of the next word? The letter A, or the word A. And then after that, because of my request, what is the most likely word that comes after the word A? Global. After global, what's the most likely possible word of all the words available? It's probably going to be fast food. So top P is top percentage or top probability, which basically says we're going to be very selective on what we have. Whoops. So let me give you an example. If I were to say the sky is, so let's clear this. The sky is up. It didn't do it. There we go. We'll do it this way. The sky is a vast, ever-changing canvas of beautiful wonder, perfect dreaming, and so forth. That is my top P. So now I'm going to change it down to 0. And let's do the same thing. Oh, it didn't update. But what top or so here's how it works. I started the thought with the sky is. Because my probability is set very low, it's going to pick the most logical word that comes after is, which is A. And then vast canvas of, so this is what it picked. If I set the top P higher, then what will happen is it will go through and it will have more words to select from. So it'll be more creative in how it does things. So temperature and top P at a very high level do the same thing. What makes them different is how they do it underneath the hood. That's the difference between them. Stop sequence basically says I can go in there and say, so if I put in here, let's say a period, what I'm saying is that respond to the request, and as soon as you hit the first period, stop. Or I could say when you hit a number or a specific letter, stop your thought at that point. It's a hard stop, no matter what's going on. The last two we have are frequency and presence penalty. Frequency says, how often do I want to reuse a word in the response? So if you want to make your response unique, where it doesn't use repetitiveness of words, like if I were to say, describe a cat. If my frequency penalty is low, then the response may be a cat is a cat because it's not a dog. Cats have claws. Cats have tails. You notice how we're using the word cat often? If I set my frequency penalty high and I say, tell me about a cat, it may only use the word cat once in the description. And it may use the word feline. It may use the word four-legged animal. Different words besides the word cat. That's what frequency penalty does. Presence penalty is more of phrase usage. Do you want to use more common phrases, or do you want to use less common phrases in the response? So that is how you control the model as far as the response and the creativeness of the model and so forth. And if you go in and look at the code, you'll see that in here. You have the ability to go in there and set that up, which I haven't saved any of it, but let's do C here. That's going to build our client. Nope, I got to save it and build it. But that's essentially what that's doing for us. It's going in and creating. We get to customize how the model works. Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
Yep.
Actually, I have a question, but it's not relating to this.
No problem. What's the question?
I had a friend who was trying to get into this entire course or program, and I heard they did apply, but they never got the email. So I'm wondering if it's still possible for them to come through.
Okay, that would be an Androsky thing. He would have to, if you email Androsky, he should be able to help you with that.
Okay, all right, no problem.
Yeah, email him and he'll be able to help.
Your friend should everyone in Jamaica has access to this program.
Oh,
So there shouldn't be a
okay,
block. There shouldn't be a blockade on your friend getting access.
okay, all right. So I just send them the information. They can go ahead.
Just forward him the email that I forward you, and he can go ahead and get registered.
The email, the one that the challenges.
The one with the courses. So the 3 course links.
Oh, okay, all right.
And then you can forward the invite to that person as well.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Asani, question, comment? What you got?
Yes. I had a question. Rather, I want you to confirm something. So the difference between temperature and probability is that temperature at a lower temperature, it's concise and straight to the point. Opposite, it's a lot more fluff, and probability works similarly, but the lower probability uses a smaller pool of words, and more is a larger pool of words to make it more unique.
Exactly. Think of probability as if the probability is high, that means there's a lot of options it can pick from. If the probability is low, then it's very restricted on options it has for the next word. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, so what we'll do is, this is a good stopping point here. We've got the recording there if you want to play this back and listen through all the different settings that we have here. What we're going to do next Friday, is I want to go through how to use your own data, as well as we're going to get into agents, because agents are a very popular thing now. So we're going to continue this next week with adding data and how the data process works. And we're going to go through some of these settings here within Foundry, just so you have an idea of how you can even further customize what you do. And a lot of these settings tie back to what's called fine tuning. Right now, we're using an existing model. With fine tuning, you can train your own model, and that's what we're going to talk about. So that'll be the game plan for next week. Okay, guys? With that, enjoy your weekends, and remember, Sunday's Father's Day. So, and do not get your father socks. We don't want socks and we don't want ties, just so you know. All right? We want foot rubs and we want quiet and relaxation. That's what we want. All right, guys. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you next week.